Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining me again. Today, the church remembers someone for whom I have a big soft spot, partly because he wrote my current favourite prayer ever. So I thought I'd tell you about him. His name was Charles de Foucauld, and he was born in 1858 in France to an aristocratic family. Both of his parents died when he was small, so Charles and his sister were brought up by their loving grandfather and spent holidays with an also much loved aunt and two cousins, one of whom, Marie, was to have quite an influence on Charles in later life. When Charles was a young man, he was quite solitary. He had a passion for reading, which he said later drove him away from God as a young man. But unfortunately, his passion for reading didn't extend to a passion for education. And as a teenager, Charles was expelled from school. With no particular ideas of what to do with the rest of his life, he joined the army. He survived 2 years of training that he hated, and then a romantic relationship got him suspended from his unit. There is still speculation that that might have been done on purpose. He was about to embark on a life of pleasure when a letter from one of his army comrades told him that the regiment was about to go and fight in Tunisia. This got Charles quite excited. He fancied a bit of battling, and so he asked if his suspension could be revoked so he could go and fight. They said yes, but instead of sending him to Tunisia, Charles was sent to Algeria, where he did fight and very much enjoyed himself. At the end of the fighting, with no more in sight, Charles decided to quit the army and go travelling instead. His family were so concerned at what seemed to them rather erratic behaviour that they placed him under the watch of a legal guardian. But by now, Charles was really developing quite a sense of adventure. He wanted to explore Morocco, but Europeans weren't allowed to go there at that time. It was considered far too dangerous. But after spending a year learning the language and hiring a guide, Charles went anyway. After a year of exploring, including a few close brushes with death, Charles took himself back to Algiers to write up his encounter with Islam, and in particular, his experiences of poverty and hospitality. From this writing, deeper questions began to emerge in Charles, and he started looking for answers. He looked amongst the writings of the philosophers and the moralists, but he couldn't find what he was looking for. He went back to Paris and began regularly meeting with his cousin Marie, who was by now a married woman. He was inspired by her. He saw how her Christian faith played out in her life and made a difference to everything that she did. And so through her and other people with whom she put Charles in touch, he had a dramatic conversion experience. Like so many people, both before him and since, Charles wanted to be as much like Jesus as possible. He spent some time, about 7 years, as a Trappist monk, but eventually both he and the elders of his community recognized that that was not really where he was meant to be, and he was released from his vows. Charles then headed to the Holy Land. He lived as a hermit for 3 years in a shed behind the Poor Clares Monastery in Nazareth, being their handyman. But he still felt that call to Morocco and Algeria. It was a dangerous place to be, but a few years later, now ordained as a priest, he found a way to return to Algeria and live amongst the nomads of the Sahara. After travelling with them for some time, Charles settled in a small village, built himself a hermitage of mud and stone, and was alone. But he wasn't, because people came to him. Charles slowly realised what he was meant to do, how he was meant to share the gospel in that place. He said that he wanted to be good enough that people would say, if this is what the servant is like, then what must the master be? And through that come to know Jesus. He spent some years doing exactly that and became a deeply valued person amongst both Christians and Muslims. On this day in 1916, he was killed, having been taken hostage as part of a skirmish between Arab soldiers serving in the French army and a Muslim group that preached against the European invaders. The morning after he was shot, The villagers buried his body along with those of 3 local Muslims that had also been killed during the attack. They did not want Charles to appear before the face of God without his brothers. A beautiful bit of togetherness. I think his life is an amazing reminder of what we see in so many people, both in the Bible and throughout history. People who are not perfect, people who sometimes got things majorly wrong, but people who God still uses. Stories like this remind me that there is hope for all of us. And his prayer, which I'm going to pray in a moment, reminds me that people who do great things for God very often pray amazing prayers. This is called the prayer of divine abandonment. I pray it regularly and I try to mean it. At the end, if you'd like to make it your prayer, feel free to stick an amen in the comments. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I ask no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commit my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart, for I love you, Lord, and so I need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands, without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father. Amen. Thank you for joining me. See you again tomorrow, I hope. Bye for now.